The Prime Minister, Mr. Carney, is into his second day of a trip to Mexico aimed at deepening economic ties, vowing closer cooperation on trade and security. Carney and Mexico's President, Claudia Sheinbaum, expressed their commitment to a shared partnership with the U.S., even though both countries have been hit with tariffs. Let's bring in Drew Fagan, professor at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy, and a visiting professor at Yale. Drew, always great to hear from you. Thanks very much. You're here with something of a reality check, I think, that Canada and Mexico may talk a good game about bilateral understandings, but we can't get too out of line with what the U.S. wants.
I think that's fair, Andy, and nice to see you. There's a trilateral agreement. We're going to renegotiate that. The actual term is review, but let's face it, it's a renegotiation with a difficult U.S. administration. Within that agreement, there's really three bilateral relationships. Canada's with the United States, fundamental. Mexico's with the United States, fundamental. Canada and Mexico, it's always been seen as a bit of a nice to have. And to be honest, we haven't made the progress we had hoped over the last 30 years. NAFTA was signed in 1994. Trade's increased substantially. By the way, Mexican exports in the last 10 years have increased a lot more than Canadian exports to Mexico, Mexican exports to Canada. But, for both of us, it's the relationship with the United States. So to what extent, with this difficult administration, can we coordinate to best effect? Not working behind the back of the United States. That wouldn't go over well with the White House. But we do have mutual interests. And I think that's what this visit was all about. It was also about repairing relations a little bit, because both sides had done things in the last few years that roiled that bilateral relationship, Canada-Mexico. So that started at the G7, where the Prime Minister invited the Mexican president to join him. We hosted, you'll remember, and now is underway with this agreement yesterday and the visit continuing today.
One way it feels that Canada has ultimately been a loser under free trade is the loss of so much auto manufacturing, and Mexico has gained quite a few of those jobs.
Well, in the auto industry, I think that's probably a fair assessment, although we always knew over time that, autos was really the original free trade sector, you'll remember, maybe not literally, going back to the 1960s. That was bilateral. And then Mexico focused on cars after NAFTA, recognizing that the car industry wasn't the sort of high-tech, cutting-edge sector it once was, and that their low-wage economy, could bring in investment, and that was successful. So successful, in fact, that the Americans tried to put a damper on that during the CUSMA renegotiation or negotiation 2018, 2019. So if you look at trilateral investment and production in cars, ours has gone down, Mexico's has gone up. We need to think about autos as kind of a trilateral relationship, I suppose, but there's all sorts of other sectors where we can do more together, critical minerals, and we can take proper advantage. But I think your point about cars is right.
And Mexico, looking back 3 decades, there hasn't been the economic boost from the trade accords that the Mexicans had hoped for?
I think that's fair. 3 decades ago, if you went back and looked at the rhetoric of the leaders at the time, Mexico by now would be a developed country. It's not. It's still a developing country. It's one of the biggest economies in the world, but that's by and large because of the number of people. The population is growing as well. But per capita income grows at a low rate. And by the way, the structure of that income is one of their big problems. And that can't be remedied by trade with other countries. There's a small retinue of plutocrats and billionaires that control a lot of the economy, a big underclass, still working within the irregular economy, as it's called, a middle class, but a middle class that hasn't grown nearly to the extent that people had hoped 3 years ago. The structure of the economy is still challenging, and that to a sizable extent, obviously also with drug cartels and illegality in all sorts of sectors, holds back the country. And I think, their politics, veering from kind of right of center politics to a very Mexican oriented, very particular kind of left-wing politics of the previous president hasn't helped in certain ways. This president is more of a technocrat. She's within the left-wing party, but, she knows her stuff, and I think she recognizes all of this.
Drew, always great hearing from you, and thanks very much.
Thank you, Andy.
Drew Fagan, professor at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy and a visiting professor at Yale.